So Limerick retained the Munster title for the first time since 1981 against a Waterford team that actually really put it up to them for, well, the entire game, losing by 4 points, 25 points to 21, when you consider how much Limerick were beat Clare by, and saw off Tipperary so convincingly. For Waterford to come in on the back of 2 winless seasons, get to the final by beating Cork comprehensively, and push this all the way to 25 points to 21, is definitely a very encouraging showing. To have to turn around next week and play a quarter final, that's going to be the really difficult part for Liam Cahill, to refocus his players again. I mean, there's nothing to suggest he can't do that, but it's just it's going to be tough for them to turn it around. So, because you'd imagine how much they had themselves built up for this, and they're going to be coming up against a team that, you know, will have had a win, whether that's Clare or whether that's Tipperary. So that's a tough one for the Déise. They're probably getting a bit too used to, you know, putting in good performances, not quite getting there. 5 Munster final losses now since last winning one in 2010. But as I said, there's an awful lot of good to this. A lot of their less heralded players really stood up here. I think Jack Prendergast was brilliant up in the full forward line, and when Roman out as well, he got onto an awful lot of ball, won frees, got a point. And even towards the end, you know, Waterford still were coming and coming. I know that they lost from the second water break onwards. You know, it was 18 each at a water break, and they lost 7 points to 3 towards the end. And, you know, Seamus Flanagan came in, he got a point and got a free. Adrian Breen came in, he got a point as well. So that sort of stuff certainly saw John Kiley's team over the line. But Waterford kept going the whole way, and they were pressing for goals. They didn't quite come. But they showed that if you run up the centre of Limerick, you can have a bit of joy. The difference between Limerick and maybe some of the other teams is that they don't leave themselves isolated at the back. So maybe Jack Prendergast or Shane Bennett or somebody might run through. And at one stage, I think Shane Bennett had a hand pass to Austin Gleeson that didn't find its mark even a bit earlier in the half. But they'd always have the numbers back, which is one of the good things about John Kiley's unbelievably skillful, hard-working, tactically set up team. Like they're brilliant. There's no question about it. But they also get players back. They know how to make sure that the back door isn't left open. Waterford will be encouraged by not conceding a goal. And I know Clare didn't concede a goal either, but they conceded 36 points. Whereas here, I think if you told Liam Cahill before the game your team is going to hold Limerick to 25 points, he'd be pretty happy. Did they believe they could get over the line? Maybe, maybe not. Certainly Limerick would, given what they've done the last couple of years. And if you take out that 20 minutes against Kilkenny in the All-Ireland semi-final last year, which we keep talking about, they generally do perform up to scratch pretty much the whole time. And just to go through some of the things that happened in the game, I did wonder, was not having Kyle Hayes in the forward line, was that kind of hurting them a little bit at some stages? I mean, he like we know, he got man of the match in the All-Ireland final a couple of years ago. You know, David Reedy did all right, and he is a very good player. We've seen him come on and make big impacts. But Kyle Hayes is probably he's such a prime athlete up there. He's so good. There was always a sense that they'd pull away in the first half anyway, even though they didn't necessarily. Like, they converted 14 of 18 to 11 of 14 of Waterford's. But just the class they have, the pace they have everywhere. Like, even Conor Prunty did a great job in Aaron Gillan, but Gillan still got a couple of scores, and a couple of them were unbelievable ones. I mean, we talked about Tony Kelly for Clare against Wexford, but some of Gillan's ones when he was away towards the sideline were really good. And you'd have to say that John Kiley's in year 4 of his game plan versus Liam Cahill in year 1. So to bridge the gap as much as they have, I know they only won one game and got straight into a final, but most teams are finding it very difficult against Limerick. So I think this is really encouraging. A damaging enough period for Waterford was between the 20th and 30th minute in the first half. There was 8 points scored and 6 of them went to Limerick, and that kind of gave them a good impetus. And Limerick won 71% of their own puckouts in the first half, and that was a lot going short. And I would imagine, Barry Nash got a lot of those. I would say Limerick are far more comfortable going short and probably trust their backline an awful lot more with the ball than Waterford would. And probably to some degree because of that year 4 versus year 1, but maybe also just they have more skillful, tastier players. I think that would probably be fair to say as well. And actually another thing about Waterford is after missing a sideline early on from Austin Gleeson, second minute or something like that, they hit the next 9 in a row. Of their next 9 shots, every one of them went over the bar. And I was thinking to myself, you can't keep that going for an entire game. Your shooting stats have to fall apart eventually. Now, ultimately over the game, that did come apart in the second half, and they only knocked over half of those scores, 10 of 19. And but Limerick created more chances than them, 39 to 33. Just to go through some of the stats there. And I think when I was talking about Limerick hitting 6 of 8 during the middle of the first half, a couple of points needlessly given to Peter Casey. One I think came from Austin Gleeson. He had possession, he turned it into a ruck ball by spilling it, and it ended up with a Peter Casey point after Graham Mulcahy fed him. And then straight away Waterford puck out directly into the hand of Gerard Hegarty, and Casey ended up throwing it over the bar as well. So yeah, some of the big more heralded players from Waterford over the years didn't really perform the way we know they can do. Austin Gleeson got 3 points, taken off eventually. Didn't quite seem at it. Didn't quite seem to be flowing and coasting on the top of the turf. Definitely feel like there's more in him, but it didn't quite happen. Jamie Byrne, definitely seen him play an awful lot better. Should have been hurler of the year 3 years ago, as I keep saying. Wasn't kind of his day. Desi Hutchinson was kept fairly quiet. Got a lovely point in the first half. Sean Finn is a brilliant defender and probably came out on top overall, you'd have to say. But it is the likes of Conor Prunty. I think Callum Lyons would be fairly happy with his day's work on Gerard Hegarty, but still Hegarty had an influence at the same time. So he's still in that hurler of the year type conversation, one that Tony Kelly is obviously leading at the moment. And if he can somehow lead them to an All-Ireland final or even a semi-final, you'd imagine he's going to be hard to shift from that position at the moment. But it's Limerick again. I said they'd win by 10 points or more, and I've been proven very wrong. And it's great for the championship. It's going to be hard for Waterford to turn that around in the space of a week, but they will feel like things are moving in the right direction. You don't perform against Limerick like that for no reason. And they did have that purple patch at the start of the second half where they got themselves level within 5 minutes and probably missed a few chances. If they'd get themselves ahead by a couple, maybe they could have sprung a shock here. But the thing about Limerick is they don't panic. They know that if they keep adhering to their system, keep using the ball well, having the likes of Graham Mulcahy up front, who was brilliant, having Aaron Gillan up there, who is always going to impact the game in some place. Peter Casey, you can keep naming the players. Keane Lynch, of course, he's obviously had some tragedy in his family in recent times, and he came out and he performed pretty well. And there's probably even more in him again. Darragh O'Donovan came on as very quiet. Will O'Donoghue, bits and pieces. There's probably some of those Limerick players who we've seen do a little bit more, and at times I think Waterford actually played them quite well in the pockets to some degree. They were trying to set traps, let them play it short to Barry Nash. A lot of the time it did work for Limerick because they're just so comfortable on the ball. But sometimes they'd sort of set traps, let Barry Nash run out with the ball or somebody else and let them hand pass it one or two, but just kind of trying to shepherd them into areas where it's going to be difficult to deliver a good ball upfield. And sometimes it worked, and their work rate definitely did upset Limerick. Whether that's setting a template that other teams can follow is something very different, because you need to you need to add a little bit more at the top end of the field to beat them, because Limerick are just so skillful. So deserved Munster champions. They've gone the hard route by beating Clare, Tipperary, and by beating Waterford as well. And they look obviously a terrific side, and they're still going to be massive favourites from here on in.